All right, we've talked about the benefits of external tracking and having that feedback loop with ourselves where we can see and celebrate progress as we're building streaks and stacking the benefits of creating these habits. But it's also really valuable to track internal changes. How are we actually feeling? Not just bef- during and after we take the action, but even before we take the action. So that's the framework for this conversation of internal tracking. It's before, during, and after. It's valuable to take, it's just imagine a before picture of something. Say like you're decluttering your garage. It's it's harder to recognize how far you've come if you don't actually document where you start. So taking that before picture internally, documenting, how do I feel right now? So, one example for me with internal tracking, as I've shared, the habits I've started building most recently were physical because I was just feeling very low energy and disconnected from my body and inflamed and uncomfortable and wanting to spend a lot of time in bed, not wanting to move around a lot. Like once my husband was home, then I just want to tap out and just need alone time and lots of time to decompress, especially after a weekend. And I was just feeling really tired. But one of the symptoms that my body was giving me was restless legs. If you know, you know. It's like you literally feel like you need to point or flex your calf muscle. There's just it's not necessarily a cramp, but it's just like your calf. In my experience, the calf muscle is possessed. It's just really annoying if we're snuggling on the couch watching a show and I just have to keep flexing. And I was trying to take magnesium for that. I know there could be vitamin deficiencies and things that related to it. So anyway, what I realized once I actually got my blood work and I realized how low my iron had actually gotten, I started taking a whole food iron supplement. I'm not a doctor, check with your doctor and a functional nutritionist and all of that. But I started taking a whole food iron supplement. And within 1 week, it might have been 2 weeks, I didn't have restless legs anymore. And I didn't even realize that that was related to low iron. I thought I was kind of addressing it and remedying it, even though I was still experiencing it. But I haven't had restless legs the way that I was having that experience at all in the months since I started the iron supplement. Who knew? I didn't know. But that's internal tracking. That was a really cool thing. I mean, the way that I've been building these habits is really a terrible scientific experiment because I've added in so many habits. I've layered in so many habits over the last few months that it's pretty hard to say which ones could be helping with which physical symptoms I was experiencing. But that was one very specific example. At the beginning, I was starting with the iron and I noticed an almost instant change of internal track. So that's one notable example. And then other things are just more subtle. If you don't document the before picture, the mental before picture of how you're physically feeling or energetically or mentally, what are the thoughts that you're having, or say it's your finances that you're working on building up a savings account. I highly recommend having a high yield savings account. We can do a whole other episode on that if you don't have one. But it's the before picture, just taking that before picture. What is the current state of the union that's rubbing you the wrong way, where you have some kind of energetic blister and you're noticing it? There's some kind of pain here. I would like to change what I can and try something different and build this habit. So it's what's the state of the union? How am I feeling about it? And what are the thoughts that I'm having about it? And then when you think about what are the actions that you want to take, what's this habit that you want to build, what are the thoughts you have or physical sensations you have about taking the action? Voice the resistance because you won't remember it. I swear, if you don't write it down, if you don't write it down and document it somehow now before, just as you're getting started, it's going to be much harder for you to remember it. And if it's harder for you to remember the starting point, then it's harder for you to fully appreciate how far you've come. So there's a lot of power in documenting right now at the beginning when you are full of resistance or doubt or cynicism, but there's just enough of a glimmer of hope that you're like, okay, but I am willing to try and just see what happens. I am curious enough to just try it one time. This bare mini version of it, I am curious to try it. So document the before and also note during while you're taking the action, just listen to yourself. What are the thoughts that you're having while you're doing the thing? And at what point in the thing, let's use an example of working out. What are the thoughts you're having while you do the thing? Is it a few minutes into it that you start to be like, okay, actually, this is enjoyable. This is not so bad. This was actually not that big of a deal. This is fine. This is fine. This is fine. Is that 3 minutes into it? 5 minutes into it? 10 minutes into it? This is all good intel. Whatever it is for you, it's just helpful for you to know your own pattern, because that's going to help you with your mom brain mentality of seeing the bigger picture and leading yourself. It's going to help you know, okay, I'm going to feel very whiny or very noisy, very resistant in the first few minutes, but then once I'm through the first few minutes, I'm actually loving it. And it's totally fine, and it's easy. It's downhill from there. Side note, I always get confused about downhill from there. Is that a positive thing or a negative thing? In this instance, I'm talking about it as in it's easy. Downhill, the ball is rolling, the momentum is inevitable at that point. So it's helpful to notice the before so that you can appreciate how far you've come eventually. And it's helpful to note during so that you can figure out what are the patterns of when it stops feeling so hard and starts actually feeling very doable, maybe even enjoyable. The more we can have and note the enjoyable pieces, the better off we'll be, because then we'll start craving that dopamine from the pleasure of doing the thing. And especially we want to note the after pieces. How do you feel after you've done it? What are the thoughts that you're having after you do the thing? Are you like, yes, I'm proud of myself? You went over to your calendar and you drew the Sharpie with the heart, if you're me. Whatever it is that you're drawing and doodling to note and track externally, let's really highlight, pin those thoughts and feelings. How do you feel in your body? I like to describe it as I'm recording these messages, like it feels sparky. I feel like I'm showing up to life, me present, Bueller. I'm here, hand is raised. I'm here in class. I'm here in life. I just feel more myself when I do these things. When I'm doing my workout, I feel like I'm taking ownership of my health. If I'm taking the iron, if I'm taking my supplements, drinking water, if I'm putting my phone away instead of scrolling for another 30 minutes, I feel like I'm taking care of myself, and that feels really good. And those feelings have started to compound to pull me into the action. Whereas at first it was harder to do these things. And at some point in life, it, I'm, you know, it's probably going to be harder to do these things again. And that's why I'm glad I'm recording these episodes too, so that I can go back and listen to my own process of what was helpful in building these habits. For if I fall out of them, now I know I've done it once, I can do it again to rebuild them. But it's just helpful to know, because eventually the pleasure and the fulfillment and the power that comes from having done the thing becomes its own carrot that is like a tractor beam pulling you forward. And that's the value of the internal tracking. It's focusing on, how do I feel now that I've done the thing? The version of me that's on the other side of resistance, who took the action and filled that heart bubble and did the thing. What are the thoughts that I'm feeling? And what are the sensations physically in my body that I'm feeling? Like I said, for me, even with the iron, the absence of the restless leg symptoms, that alone is enough for me to want to keep taking my iron and tracking my iron to make sure that it is back to some kind of normal, healthy, optimal level. That's a real incentive. But also for me, knowing that I'm completing this lift program, for example, the pelvic floor health deal that I've been doing, that's a 5-week thing. I love knowing that I'm on track to finish that and I haven't missed a day. And I enjoy that because it's me caring for myself. I'm done having babies. My body is my own again. And that's also part of why I have the capacity and desire and interest to prioritize my physical health again in a different way at this point. Now that I'm done growing them and feeding them with my body and all of that, it's my body is my own. And I want to feel as good as I can for as long as I can, with, my eyes set on my 100th birthday. So how can I support my 40-year-old self now as a 38-year-old? Almost 39, but not quite. So internal tracking, it's worth your time. Like I said, we'll think about it as before, during, and after. Tracking the before is valuable. Documenting how you feel now, whether it's good and bad, but I think mostly it's going to be the challenging thoughts. And that's why that's why you want to try something different, because you're not feeling great. in whatever way. And that's why you want to try the new habit. Note the resistant thoughts, be honest and no filter, and document what you're thinking so that eventually, as your thoughts and habits change, you can celebrate how far you've come and see that it was totally possible for you to create change and lead yourself in this way. Note how you feel during, so that you start to see at what point the resistance subsides and the persistence picks up. And you're like, yeah, okay, got it. We're good here. I'm clicked in. Actually, this is enjoyable, or this isn't that hard at the very least. And then the after effects, and bask in the afterglow, celebrate it, recognize it, and appreciate yourself. And then eventually that'll be your new baseline. And then you're challenging yourself to a new level. And then you can start all over again of the before, during, and after. But internal tracking and building that vocabulary with yourself is really powerful because it's an internal feedback loop that can help keep you plugged in to how and why you're doing what you're doing. All right. That's all I have to say about that for now. I hope it's helpful. I'll meet you back here soon.
Okay, technically that was the end of the episode, but since you're still here, 1, I'd love to thank you for spending part of your day with me, and 2, I'd love to ask you if you would take 30 seconds, maybe 60, to leave a rating and review in your podcast app before you tap out today. If you've already done that, it's amazing. Please send me a screenshot so I can thank you personally, and know that sharing this episode with a friend has the same magical powers, and I deeply appreciate both. Also, in case you're listening to the end to see if I ever actually introduce myself, hi! My name is Nikki Elledge Brown. I'm the host and author of Naptime Empires and this here On Her Terms podcast. You can find me around the internet at Nikki Elledge Brown in most places, but what you may appreciate most is actually over at onherterms.com. It's what I call the insider library. It's where you can get inside scoop, first listen rights, email updates every time there's a new episode, and then special insider only bonus content. It's all over in our private feed. Okay, that's a wrap for real. I'll meet you in the next episode.